Hello, welcome back to Calling Creatives. I've got Melanie here from A Creatively Crafted Life. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Nikki. Glad to be back again.
Yes, and today we're talking about mixed media. So we had a commenter who really wanted us to talk about mixed media, what our favorites were, how to use it, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. So in this video, we're going to talk about texture paste, which is what I like to use on my pages to get some dimension. And Melanie, what are you going to talk about on your video?
Yeah, so my video on Wednesday, we're going to talk about sprays, ink sprays,
Ooh.
I guess. So we'll see. But before we get started, I have to put out a big disclaimer here. Like, I am not the queen of mixed media. I am not a Misty Whidden or somebody like that who extensively uses mixed media. So I think part of this conversation I'm hoping for is not only just for some different ideas from you, but also from our listeners, of ways to try and incorporate mixed media more into our scrapbook layouts.
I agree. I am not an expert either. And the reason I picked modeling paste is because that's, besides Distress Oxide inks, which everybody uses on their pages for mixed media, that's the other thing that I use the most. And I was going through my pages and I've got a couple examples, but I also pulled my stash of texture paste here because I do have a little bit. I've got about 10. So the reason I have 10 is because I'm a novice and I bought the things that I thought were really cool, and then I just never used them.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And the problem with texture paste is that if you don't use them, they can go bad. In other words, they can dry out on you. And I haven't been able to figure out a way to revitalize them once they've passed that point.
Right now, I've got several that are unopened, so I think they'll be fine. But for example, my favorite is Ranger's Texture Paste Opaque Matte. And I actually keep this on my desk. And I've done a good job of using it. Like, that's a good chunk gone.
Wow,
But
I'm impressed.
because there's a good chunk gone, it's drying
Oh, yeah. So
out.
I do have a tip. I do have a tip for keeping it or helping to dry it out. I don't know that I've necessarily proven long term that it works, but I've heard good things from other people, is to use Glad Press and Seal and just add a layer of that on top and then put the lid on. And that just gives you that extra layer of, airtightness so that the air doesn't get in there and dry it out.
For those of you who actually want to try texture paste, I'm going to list a homemade texture paste down in the comments so you can follow the instructions there. Now, homemade is going to be a lot grittier and probably won't have the same fluffiness as something that's made by Ranger. So just know that it's, you pay for product that's pre-made, so you get a better quality product, but you can always fiddle with your ingredients and do that kind of thing.
Well, and Ranger also came out with a grit paste to give it a more grittiness. So it's not that it's wrong, it's just different. I've also tried drywall compounds. So if you go to the dollar store and just buy a little tub of drywall compound, it works fabulous as well. Now,
Like
I've used like for taping joints like between drywall, that
it goes on pink and then dries white.
Yeah, but you can buy it white. You don't have to buy it pink. But I would think it would still apply if it dries white. Anyways, it's a good gateway if you want to explore with it. Now, I've only used the drywall compound for cards. I don't know if you're into the whole acid-free, long-term longevity kind of thing. Use at your own risk.
And same thing if you're going to use your homemade concoction, right? I don't know that it's acid free, but with like Ranger's texture paste, see, I have another tube ready to go because that one's already dry. It does say acid free, non-toxic. So the other texture paste that I have that I use occasionally is I like metallics. And so this bottle is actually almost empty. It's a white metallic by America Crafts. Now I got this. It says on the back in 2015.
Okay.
But because it came in a tube, it's not dried out.
Yeah, it's a better medium, but these are a little bit thinner, I think, than the Ranger paste, aren't they? They're smoother.
Not really. So the difference, it's dependent upon how you apply it, right? So with either of the texture paste, I like to go through a stencil, and usually I scrape it off to the width of the stencil. Right. So it's not as thick. So this will be the width of a stencil.
Right, right.
And it dries with kind of a pearlescent sheen. I've also got it in gold and then in black.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that, because I think most of my examples that I have here are using that particular product with the sheen on it. Yeah, yeah. And I've got it in like a turquoise and a gold. And I think that's what I've got here for examples to share.
And then I've got, you know, Vicky Booten came out with this with one of her, you know, so again, it's a pearlescent. I really, for some reason, wanted the pearlescent feature, but it's also colored. Now, I tend to use my white texture paste more because it accepts color when it's dry, and you can color it prior to applying it to your page.
Correct.
You can't get that pearlescent sheen unless you add like powdered pearl or something like that, you know. So that's why I have these, but you won't see me use them very much on scrapbook pages because pearlescent is hard to duplicate in other areas.
Right. But you could get a shimmer if you applied a shimmer spray on top.
Right. Right.
So now we're combining both. We're mixing and matching, hence the term mixed media, right?
Exactly. And what's great about at least the Ranger brand of texture paste is that you can use your distress oxides, your distressed inks, your sprays, whatever you want to get color. This will accept color so well.
Very good. So did you bring any examples to share?
Yep, I did. So my favorite way to use texture paste on my layouts is just to add a little bit of texture. I'm going to try to take this out of the page protector so you can see it.
I actually did. I have some examples too. And I actually went through all my albums because I had to go through a lot because I don't do mixed media a lot. And I took them out of the page protectors and I went, wow, I must love our viewers, because I generally have a rule that once it's in a page protector, it doesn't come out again.
Right. So I'm probably going to put it right back into the page protector when I'm done showing you, because I don't want it.
My living room has all my albums open out on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally can just slide them back in.
Well, I keep my albums in two separate places, and I'll link a tour of my albums that I did last month in the upper right-hand corner. So if you guys want to look. So I only went through the albums in this room. I did not go through the basement albums. So.
Well,
okay.
I mean, the point is to give a flavor of things. So yeah.
Yep. So here's layout number 1. Now from a distance, you can't tell that there's texture paste because I left it white. But if I zoom in, let me see if I can see what you're seeing, right? I added little white flowers right here.
Yeah, it is hard. White is always hard to see on camera because of the lights. It kind of blows them out, but you can just make them out. Yeah.
Yep. So
I see that large one. I can see the large one just under your camera there.
Yep, right here. So it's very subtle. I picked white because I already had a lot of color going on this layout. That's usually my technique, is I just add a little bit of texture.
Yeah. And that's a good point about adding white. If mixed media scares you, do the tone on tone look so that it's not so in your face, and build up your adventureness in exploring other things. So I have a tone on tone one as well. So I just did a large stencil in the background of some like very tall flowers, and then embellished the rest of the layout with some stamped images. Okay, so for my next one, what I did is I added it white on a white background, and then I added some mixed media on top. Now it could be my inks or my sprays. I don't remember. So, but what's great about either of those products, you can kind of use them the same. But so here's my layout, and I'm going to zoom in. You can see the white texture paste kind of resisted the distress oxide ink or spray. I don't remember what I used again. So, and I've got it in 3 different places. Here's place number 2. Double page layout, which I never do, right? A little bit there, and then a little bit right up there. So the spray actually helps make the design pop, right? You can see it a little bit better. But it's still pretty subtle because you chose soft colors in that particular instance. Yep.
Now the other one here, I did white again. And this time I did it on top of colored cardstock. So I did this for a design team layout. So there will be a process video for this. I'll link it up in the right-hand corner. But I love how it pops off that orange. And that's glitter paper. So it adheres to glitter paper.
And all I see is glitter.
So then there's a little bit down here.
Oh, there we go. That's better. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that white.
Oh, it's the white. Okay, I thought those were stickers. Okay, no, that's great.
It's the white little star looking things. That's the texture paste.
Oh, and how effective is that?
Isn't that fun? That's probably my favorite so far. My favorite way of doing it is putting it on colored cardstock because it really pops.
Yeah. Well, and when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking that there's a few different ways or categories that we can group mixed medias in. And the obvious one is backgrounds, right? That's what everybody automatically thinks of. But another category I thought was how can we use it to embellish? And I think that's a perfect example of using it as an embellishment instead of as a background. And maybe if we change our mindset about that, we can look at different ways of incorporating it into our layout. So I do have one too, not nearly as effective as that, where I used it as an embellishment, and it's the feather in glitter. And again, it's just, instead of using a die cut or a sticker, let's look at our stencils or our paste as an embellishment.
Yep. And one thing you can do too, which I have not done, but I've seen other mixed media artists do, is you can use texture paste in those molds that are 3D molds for resin, and then let it dry completely and use it on your page too. Now, I don't make a whole bunch of bulk on my pages, so that's a little bit different than me, but I have seen them use them as embellishments on their page.
So another way that I thought you could embellish things is to use it like a border. And so this is an example here where I used like a glitter paste to make like an icicle kind of border on the layout. Cool. A little bit more finicky than just, smearing it on. But again, trying to think of other ways to use the supplies, maybe that's the route we go is.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that each of these ways we've used texture paste so far is with a stencil.
Yeah.
You don't have to necessarily use a stencil. I've watched videos where people just layer it on and they layer it on. That's not my style. I like my stencils, but it is an option. So I encourage you to take a look at other creators that do that layer. The company that I can think of is Spinabar. They lot of mixed media layouts with layers upon layers upon layers, and they use those silicone molds in addition.
Ah, very interesting. I had a thought too, and I have not tried this, and I would have to do this with a stamp that I wasn't in love with, but I wonder if you could stamp into it.
Oh yeah, so that's exactly what they do. They make a huge layer and then they add texture with like red rubber stamps that have a deep groove in them, so they get extra texture.
And the only problem that would probably hold me up is cleaning the stamp afterwards, because you'd have to do it before it hardens, or I mean, unless it peels off the red rubber.
Well, you're supposed to do that with your stencils too, Melanie. You need to wash them right away.
Yeah, but that's different because you know what I do? I just have a tub of water and I just throw them in there. I don't know if I would do red rubber, like if they're mounted on a wood block. I don't think I would throw them in a tub of water.
I take all my red rubber off the wood block.
Yeah, I have a few still floating around.
The other way that I use texture paste is canvases. So, multimedia artist, right? I actually have a picture hung up in my room that I've used a stencil and texture paste just to give a little bit of extra on the background, and it's white on white. So it's like noticeable, but not noticeable.
Right. So you're going more into the home decor kind of area of art than necessarily scrapbooking per se. Of course, the same applies for cards, right? Like if you're into card making, obviously there's an easy transition from using these supplies there as well. Speaking of canvases, one of the other things I was thinking about was how can you incorporate texture paste as a layering element in your page where you're not committed to it right away. So, the fear of putting something down on the 12 by 12 background is real. Like, I'm sure there's others that can relate, but maybe we could look at adding texture to cardstock or pattern cardstock or just plain cardstock as well, and kind of have it ready to go, already dry, but then use it as a layering piece of, what do we call it? Just a layering element, I guess, on your scrapbook. That way you don't have to worry about the dry time while you're in the groove. It's already done. You still get the texture, look, and feel, but you also can move it around and place it where you want to without, having that decision in the moment kind of thing. I don't know, something to think about.
So part of my scrapbooking process is I lay down my base foundation, I get my paper ready, my photo ready, that placement, and then I work on my embellishments. If it's stickers and die cuts, what I use is a layer guide from Happy Planner. And this has like kind of a matte finish and then a shine finish. You put your stickers on the matte finish and it comes right off.
Okay.
It's incredible. So what I can do is then I can move my clusters around on my page to where I want them. And I can lift it, put my stencil down to figure out where I want my texture paste, put my texture paste down, and then I know exactly where my stickers are going to go.
Oh, very cool.
So this tool has changed the way that I plan my pages.
Interesting. It's just a piece of plastic, a coated piece of plastic. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yep. So it's originally designed for Happy Planner and people to design their spreads for their week and be able to take the stickers off.
Gotcha.
Really cool.
Interesting. I've actually never seen that. I've seen other people use like wax paper and stuff like that to kind of map out their pages, but I didn't think of using a piece of plastic like that. I wonder if the Dollar Tree cutting mat would work.
I don't think so because that's shiny. The point of this is that one side is matte. And that's the part
so it's not that
here. I like it better than wax paper because it's, it's thick. It's not going to bend on me.
And reusable. Yeah.
Reusable, and the wax isn't going to come off and ruin my sticker.
Right.
So, and I have two of them. So this is like the 8.5 by 11 size. So I have to use both, if I'm going to put one cluster in one corner and the other.
Right.
But I've got two, so that's not a big deal.
Right. Cool. The other thing I was thinking about when we talk about layering texture paste and stuff is to change the mediums that you put them on. You can add texture paste to like acetate, for instance. So if you wanted to do a clear layout as something different, you could take a piece of acetate, add your texture paste, and then build your embellishments on top of it. That might be kind of cool.
I wonder if it would stick.
I'm pretty sure it would, because I thought I saw Ellie Edwards or somebody do it in one of her December daily books. Ooh. But I personally have never done it. So you'd have to experiment again, like everything. Big disclaimer. Try it and see if it works. Worst that can happen is it doesn't, right? The other thing that I found out recently, I was taking a mixed media class, and she always puts texture paste on tissue paper, white tissue paper. And she does that because, again, this was more for art than necessarily scrapbooking, but I think the same could apply, is that when you apply like a gel medium or something on top of a tissue, the tissue melts away. Basically, it fades into the background and all you see is the texture paste. So it's another way of placing the texture where you want it without having to do it in the moment. So if you don't have one of your fancy little, plastic guides or whatever, that might be something else to explore, especially if you want to use it more as an embellishment. Now, that being said, obviously, like a white tissue on a white background would probably fade away more so than if you were to put it on a colored background. But I don't know, something to experiment with.
That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, and she used gel medium. I don't know if Mod Podge would have the same effect, but again, I would say if you use what you have in your stash first, try it, experiment with it. If it works, great. You learn something new, you can share in the description below or over on my Facebook group. Either or would work really well. And we can all learn from everybody experimenting.
And that's the great thing about mixed media, right? There's really no wrong way to do it. There's just different techniques. Try them and see what you think, right?
Yeah. So are you into making your own embellishments?
I have been a part of a hop this year called Scraps to Embellishment with Ginger's Corner. And one of the Saturdays, I don't know which one, it depends on the week theme, I will be making my own embellishments out of scraps.
Oh, cool. Well, I was thinking that you could use like basic shapes like circles and squares and triangles, geometric. And if you added texture paste to that, and those would make great cluster bases, right? So another way to kind of enhance what you already have and get the mixed media in without fully committing to the whole, big background kind of look.
Yes. I love that star stencil on that Halloween. Like, I love it so much. And if I were to like do a big blue circle saying white texture paste in those stars,
there you go. There you go. Ideas are flowing.
Do you have anything else for texture paste?
I just have a couple other examples I thought I would just share before we log off here. So more about things that we've talked about already. But this one here, I've just used it as kind of like an embellishment along the edges. And this was an album of a trip that I did to South America. And so what I ended up doing, and this is just more about like album creation, is using the same design over and over again in your album to make it feel cohesive, but it still looks different. So this is also the same album, the same thing, but this is with like a gold shimmer paste instead of the green, but same stencil. And then the other thing, this is not mine. This is a Paige Evans cast off, if you will. So I took a class with her and she was selling a bunch of leftover bits, and this was in there. And she basically painted white strips and then applied, I don't know if you can see that, the flower texture on top of it. So again, this is the whole idea of mixed media, is that you mix and match the different supplies in your space to come up with some different textures. I think this kind of looks like a fence with like flowers. Now, maybe it should have gone this way as a fence, but I chose to go this way. But again, it's that tone on tone white, but yet it's on the blue background, so it still pops out.
Very cool. I love those layouts.
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun. And it was funny because, like I said, I used it in that one album and I had the supplies out, right? Because I had a big kit. So they were there. I started using them. The more I used it, the more I used it. Do you know what I mean? So that's, I guess, another thing I would just encourage people to do is if you're really wanting to use mixed media, you got to put it where you're going to use it and be intentional. So my plan is for the month of March to focus on mixed media. We'll see how well I do. So stay tuned.
That's great. That's great. I know this month I did a video with my sketches for that week, and I use texture paste in that. So you can see an application of it here.
There you go.
Don't forget to check out Melanie's video on Wednesday, and make sure to subscribe, and we'll see